What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fight to Thrive podcast. I am your host, Dr. Tyler, and excited to be back here with you today talking about mindset. And this is going to be a little bit of a continuation from week 5, or rather episode 5 of this season, when I started talking about Michael Singer's work in the Untethered Soul in a way that we can kind of step back from our thoughts and be able to recognize that there's kind of a deeper aspect to ourselves and not taking our thoughts so seriously all the time. And I'm going to go through a real life example. And the main reason that I care so much about this topic is because, number one, I've seen it help myself a lot and help myself deal with stressful situations that I have a difficult time handling. Such as when I was going through my cancer battle and being able to really incorporate the knowledge that's embedded in Michael Singer's work and just the concept around it helped me frame why things like meditation, things like breath work are so important. And when I know the why behind the reason I'm doing things, it really helps me stay consistent with it. And so I wanted to share some of that with you in order to help you better handle your stress. And because we all, to a certain degree, face different levels of stress throughout our lives. And if you have these tools that you can incorporate in ways of thinking about things, it can make the difference, between that taking you to a breaking point or not, or being able to use it as a learning experience and being able to grow from it and it actually being a good thing for you. And so there's an acronym as far as practical steps that you could use and how you can think about things that I will introduce towards the end to help you kind of remember, again, particular tools that can help you handle stress better. And part of the concept behind this is that we have our brain, and most people are just living from the brain and from thoughts, just bouncing from one thought to the next and just running kind of wherever the brain wants to go. But the problem with that is that our brain and our thoughts are based on our past conditioning, how we were brought up, different things we've been exposed to. And so if we're just operating from that place, we're not actually kind of in the driver's seat of our thought life and where we want to go. And so in order to realize that we have much more depth to our consciousness and to our thought life than just our brain and just our day-to-day thoughts, it's important to realize that when I think something, right, like let's say the word giraffe, like I keep repeating it. Go ahead as you're listening or watching, just repeat that word giraffe to yourself, and you can see it, right? You're able to step back into that place of the witness and watch yourself repeating that word giraffe. So the fact that we can see it means that we are not it. There's something deeper where we're able to witness our thoughts and what's happening. And so I'm going to take us through a quick example of a stressful situation where people might just, again, run with their thoughts based on, number one, our past conditioning, but also our biology. And it's from the past conditioning perspective, it's ways that we have conditioned ourselves, but also, again, have been conditioned from the outside world. And then our biology is rooted mainly in reproduction and survival. Our brain's number one job is to try to keep us safe. And so when we can recognize that kind of from a scientific perspective, we can again start to step back and take the thought life a little less seriously. And so the example is imagining that you work in finance and you've made a big mistake that you could get fired for. And so let's say it's on a Friday afternoon, evening, and you misallocated client funds into the wrong investment account. And you start panicking because you know this is a high maintenance client and that they're definitely not going to be happy. And note that the mistake itself has already been made, and there's nothing that you can do to change it until Monday morning when the market's open. And so you've emailed your client, you've emailed your supervisor, notified them of the situation, and there's literally nothing left that you can actually do about this particular situation. But what happens many times is this type of situation sends people into panic mode, creating all these negative thoughts and feelings and trying to grasp control of the situation and ruminating on it and just continuing to repeat the same thoughts, worries, again, trying to exert control over the situation. And part of this is because our brain is wired in a way, again, rooted in a survival state. And so when our brain thinks about, our job as being threatened, it looks at it as our survival is being threatened because it's tied to our our food, our shelter, our clothing, and ultimately our survival. And so the brain, again, trying to keep us safe, starts to go into panic mode. And the stressful thoughts that it produces just leads to stressful feelings, both of which can contribute to this stressful fight or flight response being activated in the body, where the heart rate increases, the breathing becomes rapid and shallow, and then that leads us to become more stressed and panicked, which leads to more stressful thoughts, more stressful feelings, which can keep us in that fight or flight state. It's kind of this negative feedback loop. And so this stress response, this physiological stress response from the body, is meant to be experienced as a short-term adaptive response to an immediate threat. For example, like let's say you have a lion chasing after you, back in the caveman days, and we're trying to flee from the situation. It's not meant to be experienced as a long-term answer to a problem. And for the example that I talked about, the person who made the mistake on Friday, now they're ruminating, worrying over the entire weekend, and it's taking up all of their thought life, all of their emotional energy. It's stealing a lot of, energy that they can be putting towards other things. And it degrades our health if we're experiencing this fight or flight, this stressful response over a long period of time. It can have a very negative response on our health. And examples of that would be weight gain, decreased energy and performance. And so some of us are much more prone to these ruminating thought patterns, this kind of obsessive response to a stressful situation. And that comes with our genetics. And if we have in our family background, for example, a lot of OCD patterns or anxiety patterns, though just because those are underlying in our genetic code doesn't mean that those genes are going to be expressed. The expression of those genes are not just because of the stressor, like potentially getting fired from our job, but it's more of our response to that stressor. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today, is how we can start to look at this response to the stressor a little bit differently, and so potentially avoid some of these thought traps and going down to this negative rabbit hole that can take us further away from the person that we're meant to be, essentially. And so again, the mind is trying to just keep us safe, but in doing so, it's actually kind of playing a big trick on us, because it's not keeping us safe. It's very degrading for our health, negative consequences to our body, to our immune system, to our emotions, and most of the time, when it's trying to keep us safe, our actual, literal survival is not actually threatened. In the example that I'm talking about, the person, worst case scenario, they get fired. They're probably going to be able to get a new job. Let's say they get fired and they can't get a new job. Well, they're probably going to have some family or friends that will take them in, or, their social programs. Like, there's all these things where, worst case scenario, they're going to be safe, right? They're going to be able to get some form of shelter and food. And as long as they stay out of their own way, like a lot of times these negative rabbit holes of negative thought work kind of get us into a place of reaching for other negative things to mask what's going on, like drugs, alcohol, poor food choices, things like that. And instead of doing some of this work that I'm going to talk about in order to kind of let this go, let these negative thoughts go from the root level, essentially. And so even if there were no fallback options, and this person does get fired and them and their families on the street, the repetitive worrying about the things that are no longer within their control make those negative outcomes more likely and not less likely. And so, back to this example, if they have increased stress output, let's say all weekend, and they don't sleep all weekend because of it, they have worse mood and energy. They might be more likely to lose their temper when the issue is being addressed on Monday when they do get back to work. Or they might make another mistake because they're in this exhausted, burned out state because of all the stress that they've let kind of consume them over the weekend. And what's interesting about this is there's a recent Cornell study that found that 85% of the things that we worry about never even happen in the first place. And so, for this example, they might get back to the office on Monday and their boss might have made a similar mistake in the past and with another high maintenance client, and they might end up laughing it off with them on Monday, and all this doom and gloom that they've been, worried so much about over the weekend doesn't actually take place, as most things that we worry about don't actually do. And so it will serve us, 100% will serve us to start to find ways to create space from this negativity and to start to let it go. Again, it's very difficult to do, but there are steps to do it. And if you work towards it, incorporate some of the things that I'll talk about, you can get closer and closer to that place of peace and calm and more joy in your life and putting more energy towards the things that are within our control and not just trying to distract ourselves from it, because a lot of people recognize that, these negative thought patterns, all the stress don't serve us. And so the instinct from a societal level is often to just reach for something easy to kind of mask what's going on a deeper level. Food, social media, even healthy things like working out, or doing more work can be a form of this. And so what we're trying to do through my coaching program, through the integrated mindset program that I lead people through, is help guide people to ways that they don't need to mask. And because when you just ignore the boogeyman under the bed, he just keeps getting scarier and scarier. It just builds up more and more stress. It's kind of like you're trying to put keep the lid on the pressure cooker as it builds up more and more energy. It takes a lot of energy to actually keep that lid on the pressure cooker. And so we don't want to just distract ourselves and suppress these things away because we're not addressing them from the root cause level. And so, as I said before, a good first step can be to realize that we are not our thoughts. Looking at our brain and our mind as something that is something that like we can use like a muscle, like with our arm picking something up. Again, it's more complex and more powerful than like just a bodily muscle. But if we can look at it like that and look at it as almost like there's someone else's thoughts, they're not ours, and objectify them, it can help to even have like another name for the psyche, that more shallow part of us that's just stuck in that thought and feeling loop. Like, my name's Tyler. I like to kind of refer to him as Taylor. Oh, Taylor's, really acting up today. He's really going off. And again, that's somebody else I'm thinking of. And just that first step can create enough space to start rewiring some of our patterns of thinking. And now we can start to take specific steps now that we've created that little bit of space in order to create more space and to ultimately let go and not continue to go down this negative loop anymore. And so the acronym that I came up with for these specific steps to take is CRAB ADS. And in the Integrated Mindset program, we talk about being in this more positive state as being like above the line, experiencing above the line emotions. And a lot of times, if we're not used to being there in this more peaceful, joyful, loving state, the old part of us that doesn't feel comfortable with us being there will try to crab us, will try to pull us back down. And so it can help me to think about that, like when I do want to go into this fear, worry cycle, that it's just the crab is trying to pull me back down. So crab and then ads, and they're, they have ads up on the billboard. They're trying to attract us back to the negativity cycle, for example. And so the C, the very first step for me, helps to put it into context, whatever the situation is, or even just life in general. Michael Singer likes to talk about all the time how, we are just this tiny little, Earth itself is just this tiny little planet in this vast galaxy. If you look up at the stars at night and you see, thousands of stars, well, each one of those stars has enough power to essentially be the sun, right? To provide enough heat and energy as the sun does. And we happen to be close enough, even though it's still 93 million miles away, to one of those, for it to provide the perfect amount of heat for us to live, for it to provide life here on Earth. And, we're just here for a little blip of time, but we still take our lives so seriously, even though that there's all of these other things going on that are well without or outside of our control. Not only, if we think about the Earth coming into existence from the start, but things like the law of gravity, that if it were off by just just a little bit, it wouldn't be able to support human life on Earth. Or things that are happening within the government, that are outside of our control, or the economic system. And we tend to think as humans, because we do have a lot of power and intelligence, that we're all-knowing, and that if we do continue to worry about these things over and over again, that we're gonna come up with the perfect solution. But sometimes we got to recognize that there's a whole hell of a lot that's well outside of our control. And to be able to recognize that we're not as big of a deal as we think we are, and just start to put life into context a little bit, is a good first step for me. The C in the crab ads. R is relax, knowing that you're safe and you've made it through difficult situations before, and it's helped make you better, in the long term. When I think about a lot of the hardest things I've been through, they've been the best things for me in the long term. And so just relax, knowing that even though the brain is trying to tell me that it's not, It's safe. We're safe. It's going to be okay. A, bring attention into the body and where you most feel the breath. That's the B. So we have context, relax, attention into the body, where you're feeling the breath, and then slow it down. Big 360-degree expansion. Go ahead and take a couple deep breaths for me as you're listening or watching. Go ahead and big inhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. Exhale, 7, slow, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's do one more. Inhale. Full belly breath. Slow exhale, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. Exhale. And note when we get to the A and the B of the crab, we're taking our attention away from our thoughts. We're just focusing on that count. The example that I did was a 5-second inhale, 7-second exhale. There's a lot of different examples that you can use, but that is a good kind of quick reset one just to start to calm down. And just after those 3 breaths that we just did, you may already be noticing a difference. And it's a great way to, again, start to create more space away from the negative thought loops. Get more in the driver's seat of your life from a deeper level of consciousness. The next A is acceptance. Accept that life itself is imperfect. It's going to give us these challenges in order to continue to grow through them and, again, become a better version of ourselves. If everything was perfect all the time, we wouldn't be pushed into this new area of growth that we need to in order to overcome some of the most difficult challenges in our life, which might be part of why you're listening to this podcast today, because you've been experiencing a lot of stress and you need to continue to grow from that stress and grow in ways that help you better handle that stress. And so that might be the main reason, is because God or whatever you believe in is preparing you for more challenges in the future that you need to overcome in more stressful circumstances and situations. And if you have the right tools that you need in order to do that, then you're going to be better prepared to handle those more difficult situations in the future. So acceptance. Accept that this is just a part of your life, a part of your growth process, and stop trying to fight against it. Stop trying to resist it. Stop trying to keep the lid on the pressure cooker and keep building the acceptance that this is life, and I don't need to wait for everything to be perfect for me to feel okay, to feel love, to feel joy, and to open up my heart towards others. The D is decide. Decide if there's anything that needs to be done about the situation right now in this moment. If not, then we again decide to let go and surrender to those things that are outside of our control, to that, if you believe in it, higher power, and to live fully in the present moment. Because that is where we are most powerful. If I have peace and I'm fully in the present moment, all of my energy is directed towards what I can control right here and now. There's no doubt in my mind that is where we are most powerful. And the last is S, shift. Shift the focus away from self and towards others, right? Once we feel safe, once we feel like we have love for ourselves and that we have compassion for ourselves, recognizing that, we all make mistakes and things aren't going to be perfect. we can start to view ourselves a little bit more like God views us, with more compassion, more love, and start to create more of a sense of peace. And now we're able to shift that fulfilled state towards others, trusting that we're safe and taken care of, and we're going to continue to be in the future. And a quote I really like around this is, the bigger your world is, the smaller that your problems become. And I believe that wholeheartedly to be true. Once we are able to connect with others and really, again, take some of the beauty in our lives and share it with others, it creates a lot more sense of safety, because we're contributing back to our tribe, which from an evolutionary standpoint makes sense. It's going to help our survival if we are able to contribute in our own unique way back to our tribe. But in order to do so, a lot of times we need to let go. Again, back to the last step, decide to let go of the lower energy states of fear, anger, desire. It's not to say that those aren't going to come up. Those do serve us at times when, again, for more short-term periods of time when we need them to kick us into gear. That's great, but we can't live there. We can't stay there. And so I'm not trying to tell you like what to believe in, but for me, these last two steps, the decide and then the shift, it's incredibly important to have something to let go to, right? Some kind of deeper sense of a greater power, something greater that's going on, that's connecting us all, that's making this vast galaxy and solar system and universe and planet operate in the way that it incredibly does. If you look at the odds of that, of even coming into existence, they're astronomical. And so, however you believe, if there is something greater that you do believe in, it really helps to lean into that from a faith perspective, to be able to fully let go and, put it at the feet of God and just give it to Him, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And I promise you that this process is going to be so much easier. And so again, the ultimate goal is to get you into a place of peace and love, living fully in the present moment. And this is a really difficult place to get to, in particular if you're used to operating from a place of stress, desire, or fear, trying to always keep the things that you don't want away from us, and then always trying to attract the things that you think that you need to be okay from a place of desire, instead of just, recognizing and accepting that some of these things are going to happen and they're not going to happen, and not all of that is within our control. Yeah, we want to fully participate in our life, but what I'm getting at, what I've been trying to explain, is that in order to do that from the maximum potential that we have, we need to be fully operating from this place of the present moment. And the only way to truly do that is to let go of the lower states of fear, worry, angst, desire, etc. And the issue with this is, particularly in modern America, is that so many people are able to achieve a lot of success when operating from these lower level states. But I believe that they're able to achieve success in spite of these things and not because of them. In particular, when we're thinking in the long term, like you've probably heard of a lot of different successful people that don't feel happy, because one of the reasons is because operating from a place of fear, worry, desire, and they're using that in order to fuel them to get to the top of the mountain, which can work, but the climb itself is not very fruitful, right? Which you're only at the top of the mountain for a few moments, and you can enjoy that high that you get to experience while you're there for a little bit, but then it just becomes, we're a product again of our previous thought patterns. And if we're rewarded from coming from a place of fear and desire for that long of a time period, then our brain is going to just, again, a lot of this is happening subconsciously, it's going to come back into this place of fear and worry because that's what got the result that we want. And I don't think it's necessarily always responsible for getting that result, but that's how our brain connects it. Oh, that worked last time, so let's go back to it, when it doesn't have to be that way. And so that's why a lot of these changes can feel so difficult, because this place that we're operating from is so unfamiliar. Like, oh, if I'm just coming from peace and love and joy, how's that going to get me to the top of the mountain? It's like, no, those things are some of the best fuel that we have. Like, and I'm not saying to stop the climb. Like, yeah, we keep climbing, we keep pursuing that next level of growth, because that is ultimately how we're going to best serve others. And that's what's fueling us. If I look at myself in this example, it's like my heart is so full because of the love that I feel that God has put into my life and every little part of my life, personally, professionally, relationally. Now I want to spread that to those around me. And I'm climbing, I'm working hard, trying to get this business going, trying to help other people and try to connect with other people and get them to their next level through improving their health and wellness. And it's not that I'm less successful than when I used to operate from more of a fear-based model. I'm actually a lot more successful, and I'm enjoying the process a lot more. And that's what life is all about, is enjoying the process, right? All of this is a learning experience. It's all about just getting a little bit better and just enjoying the ride. There's going to be some tough times that we got to work through, but we don't need to get wrapped up in the difficulty of it and play out all the worst case scenarios and be stuck in our mind and always worrying that things aren't going perfectly or that they're not going to go according to our plan, because there's a greater plan at hand here than just our plan. And when we can lean into that, we can stay focused on leaning into that greater plan and coming from these more positive states that keeps us in the present moment, that keeps us more joyful, and things just start to naturally come into our lives from a success standpoint, from a positivity standpoint, because like attracts like. When we are coming from a more positive place and living there in a consistent basis, we're able to bring more of that positive energy into our life, and other people can see that and notice that, and that they're going to respond differently to you, and it's going to attract different kinds of people to you. And when we can do this, we're no longer waiting to get to the top of the mountain, to get to the end of the rainbow in order to feel okay. We already feel good now. We're experiencing the most that life has to offer. We're enjoying the moment, and we're in the moment. And that's where life starts to improve. And again, none of this is easy. It takes work. And for me, it has taken specific practices to integrate into my life to create this space from the thought feeling loops on a consistent basis. To come from a deeper level of consciousness, you have to incorporate practices like meditation, like breath work, like journaling. All these things we teach in the integrated mindset program. And so if any of this stuff has resonated with you, I would highly encourage you to contact me, and I can let you know more about the program and how to use these things to your advantage, because it's like working out for the mind, right? We work out our body and we don't expect to do it once and then we're just going to stay in shape for the rest of our lives. It's something that we need to continue to do day in and day out on a consistent basis in order to fully experience all of the benefits of a consistent workout program. And so it's the same thing for your mind. And this is a great training program that will allow you to take it and then integrate it into your life in a way that it's a training program that you can consistently continue to incorporate to get closer and closer to these ideals of living from a more present and peaceful, joyful state. And so, again, reach out to me if any of that resonates with you and you're interested in the program. We have a group-based model. We also have an individual coaching model. And it will require work, but in my view, it's the most important work that you can do. And so just a quick reminder summary, in case you weren't able to take notes of the acronym CRAB ADS, is number one, putting it into context, realizing that there's a lot of other things going on that are outside of our control, and not thinking that we are, controlling everything that happens in our lives, and putting the situation that we're worried about and putting our lives into context. R is relax, knowing that we're safe, knowing that you've made it through these difficult situations before. A and B is bringing attention into the breath, in the feelings and sensations around that, in deepening the breath and relaxing around the breath. Next A is accept that life is imperfect. It's going to give us challenges, and we're going to keep staying joyful through those challenges. D is decide. Decide if there's anything about the situation that needs to be done right now in this present moment. And if not, decide to let go and surrender to those things that are outside of our control and come back to what is in our control, which is the present moment. And the S is shift. Take the focus off of ourselves and our problems, shift it onto others and how we can give more love to ourselves and then to others, and trust that we're safe and taken care of in the process. So I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.